Semnol kake mo fa seda.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast on EVE Online, recorded live on Twitch Saturday at 1500 Universal Time. I am your host, Matterall, and today we have an excellent show with both CCP Larrikin and Aerith with us today. We're going to talk about a couple different things, but obviously Blood Raiders be a big part of that. So thank you for joining us, and let's get to the introductions. And Aerith, how are you doing today?
Today is an excellent day. I go on vacation tomorrow, so I'm chill.
Oh, it's perfect. We're also happy to have CCP Larrikin.
Hello. How is everyone today? That doesn't really make any sense, does it?
No, it does. It's all Saturday across all the time zones, I think, except Australia.
Did you guys know that Eurovision is on this evening? I am so excited. It's going to be amazing. Australia is competing in Eurovision, which doesn't make any sense, but let's not talk about that too much.
Oh, actually, you probably will, because that was a big topic off stage. When Tiberius gets here, he's a big fan of that. Okay, so also rounding out the panel today, we have Apothny.
Hey, guys.
And we have Seamus with us from EVE University.
Hello.
All right. Later in the show, we're going to be joined by Tiberius Stargazer, who's running a bit late today. But let's get started. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the mysterious man, Aerith, who's less mysterious now than he was a year ago. But he is from Goonswarm and is their financial director and leader of the GARPA team, which is basically their long-range planner. So basically, the empire builder behind Goonswarm and the Imperium and stuff like that. And there's a lot to talk about there. But Aerith, why don't you tell us like how you got started with EVE and a little bit of your background that you're willing to share?
Sure, I came in the very first wave, so the end of 2005 wave, you know, kind of that Lordless era. I came in right after Lordless, right as before Goonswarm was even formed, you know, Goonfleet era, when we were still with Tolan. And we were up in, I think it was BFBK, I don't even remember the name now, but the very first battle we were ever in was like a fight for someone else's space that we had nothing to do with. We were just tagging along. So I'm one of the few OG goons that are left. There's only probably a couple dozen of us still around from that era.
So what was the ambition then? Like, was it just to test out this game that was a sandbox?
Yeah, for me, see, I came from Star Wars Galaxies where I was leadership there. So that game had basically imploded due to some of the design decisions made by the company with the combat revamp. It just killed it. So we were looking for a new game. We were looking for a hardcore game. We like things where you have meaningful loss, lots of risk versus reward. And Goons had a thread up, and I was like, hey, that sounds interesting. Let's go do that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I figured that you guys, because the thing those two had in common, I know you came from SWG, was that they're sandbox and you could do what you want in it. And there was kind of an element of vampiric PvP. Maybe not vampiric, but there's definitely PvP. It's a very competitive game, especially on a mental level. That seems to be like what you like to do.
Yeah, I tend to go to whatever the MMO at the time that I consider the most hardcore, with the most loss, the most suffering. That's where I go, because I'm here for the suffering.
to deal it out, not to accept it, right?
Sure, but to some degree, pain is pain, and if you like pain, then you have to be able to enjoy it on yourself as well. But yeah, I mostly like to inflict it upon others.
Regular old joy and sunshine.
Yeah, well, that's true, because I think like a lot of people say, if the game's not fun, why are you playing it? And I never understood that, because it's almost like I don't have a choice. I have to play EVE because it is. Maybe it's liking the punishment, but I think there's other things at work there of liking the challenge to make your way through it and survive it, that sort of thing. So
to me, it's more about having an outlet to express the darker sides of your personality in a safe, healthy way, right? Get it all out online, inflict suffering on a mass scale, reap those tears, read your chat porn, and then you're mostly a balanced human being in your life.
Well, is that true? I mean, we always discuss this. Is it a mask that allows you to be yourself, or is it a mask that allows you to be something else?
It's a mask that allows you to be yourself, I think.
So that's already in there. You're already that competitive guy, but this is a safe place to let that really show.
Yeah, like, so for those who don't know, I'll just give a very light overview. I'm an executive in real life at like a Fortune 20. So in a corporate America, you have to be very proper, professional. You hate the people you work with half the time. You would like to see them get cancer and die, but you obviously can't express that viewpoint, and you have to be mostly controlled. And so you need an outlet for that stress, for that compulsion.
Somewhere. Okay. So only a Fortune 20?
Well, yeah, and it's actually a little higher, but I don't want to get too specific because then it narrows it down too much.
Oh, I'm kidding. Yeah. So you were driven to Eve. Have you been playing this whole time, or you took a break, or how'd that work out?
I've been playing basically the whole time except for a 1-year break, right between Delve 1 and Delve 2. I like to tell people that, we were in QY6 when I quit. I burnt out running towers and like Paragon Soul. Left all my ISK and assets in space, like multiple Pharaoh Joe chains, lost basically everything I had. Came back a year later, they had just taken QY6 again, and I had to start from scratch.
Oh, you started from scratch again. And did you want to be in leadership again, since you were in leadership before in a different game?
I never really sought it out. Like, it's kind of one of those things that most of the people in our leadership are not people that want to be in leadership. I just want to inflict suffering. But over time, I realized that the best way to do that was to be in the highest parts of leadership you can. Because, like, I'd like to tell the other finance people I run into in Eve that they, brag about how much ISK they have and all this stuff. I'm like, what is ISK without power? If you can't use power and ISK to inflict suffering or to do whatever you're going to do in the game, then what's the point?
Well, it's funny because you're very well tied to finance of Goonswarm. You're one of the financial directors, I guess, along with Weasler, and there's another one. And you guys invest the money. You keep it making money by sticking it into the markets, right?
Yeah. So you got to kind of think of this as the Cabal is very much like Minna was one of my first apprentices. Querns is one of my apprentices now, and he's basically a sub-director. Minna's still around, but he's not really active anymore, and Weasler's still active. But you have a combination of doing alliance work, like alliance planning, which is the predominant part of our time is 90% working for the alliance, probably 5% hobbies, and probably 5% personal ISK. That's kind of the breakdown. And investing for the alliance is a very small part of that. But strategic planning, economic planning for the alliance occupies the lion's share of your time. Like, for example, I architected the entire Delve economic plan, like everything from the jump bridge network to where the stations are, to what they were, to how people would use it, to the taxation system, everything. But I had been planning something like this for years. So I've been kind of predicting the tea leaves around where CCP had to go based upon the things that were wrong with the game and the likely systems they would implement. And then you just model the economic models that best fit those systems. So when Citadels came out and kind of revamped Eve, we were ready for it. All we did is like pulled out the Jubal plans. We're like, oh, this is plan A. Let's dust that one off, and here we go.
You'd already kind of think tanked it, I guess.
Yeah, about 3 years ago. So not only we'd already think tanked it, we'd already invested in it and invested the alliances to the tune of trillions among all of us a couple years ago. So we were just sitting here waiting.
Oh, so the miracle of Delve didn't happen overnight. It was something that it'd been in the works a long time. You just had a blank slate to finally do it with the right timing.
Yeah, I'd originally wanted to do it. Most people don't remember when we held everything from T-null all the way down to period basis. I had originally was the only one. I said, let's not give up Delve. Delve, from a mathematical, from a strategic, from all of these other reasons, is absolutely the best region in the game. But at the time, it couldn't have held us. Like, there was too many alliances, too many allies, too many people. So we made the decision to abandon Delve and Fountain and kind of go back to the Northwestern Quad. But objectively, at the time, if we had had this system, we would have stayed in the Southwest Quad.
Yeah. So this whole aspect of the game is really interesting, and I think we can go into the Delve miracle or whatever you want to call it. That just threw that name out there. It's not trying to name it, but it's working, right, in a big way.
Yeah, it took a lot of internal, I would say, friction to get here, but it is working. It's working hilariously well, and it's actually dead on the projections I had given internally for where we would be at month over month on income, those income sources, how they would break out, and then how the growth would continue to accelerate until we hit a saturation point. We're not there yet. And I'm not referring to just people in space and TrueSec. I'm referring to market, how the market's filled in, how competitive we are with JITA, our logistics, and how the supply chains work. We're not quite optimized, and you can see already the numbers are already just hilariously beyond anything else.
Yeah, we'll talk about the reporting of those numbers too, because that led to a controversy, which we want to get to. But I first want to point out that the Delve model that you put into place is working. Maybe it's working because you guys are so big. Maybe it's just working because it was a good plan. I don't know. But it's also, you've also convinced allies that this is the way to go. And I think, from what I understand, I think other groups are going to start following that model too, because of just some. I don't know if it's early to say, but I've got some anonymous intel that NC and PL are trying to clear up some land up north in Teenal and that area to possibly either stick renters in there or to make some kind of a system like this work.
I think they're going to run into significant challenges because there are a lot of variables you have to get right to make the system work. I'm not saying it's insurmountable. It's going to be a learning experience for them. I'm sure over time they'll get it, but it's not going to be fast. Like ours was instant. You saw us go from 0 to 60 in like 2 months because we had the plan. We knew the variables. We had already been working on a different version of this in deck, based on Dominion and Outpost. We already been kind of trying to do this, but the mechanics were too limited to actually make critical mass and launch, right? So it was a failure to launch in deck, and it always would have been until Citadels. And then we didn't get a chance to try it with Citadels and deck. But with Delve, we did. We had a green field. We came in. We just annihilated everyone and started immediately on first the strategic plan, which, as far as I'm concerned, we probably over-rotated a little too much to defensive. When we first moved in, we stayed in DTAC-W too long. We should have moved to 1DQ sooner. You'll see, like if you look at when we dropped the outpost in 1DQ, that was when I wanted to move. But there was a lot of internal friction around even getting that move done. And DTAC-W, you could not do what we're doing with DTAC-W as your capital.
Are you talking about your capital? You wanted to move your capital from one system to a different system.
Yeah, choosing the place, I would say top 5 variables, the location of your capital is one of those. There's a lot of things that need to go into that choice. It's not always the same sort of list of variables for every region. Every region is a little unique. I would say the closest region to kind of why we picked our capital would be like Impasse. Like COT made a great pick there. But for a Teenal, that would be a totally different type of capital than it would be for us. So there's things that go into that choice that dictate how your economy is going to function and what it's going to be good at and what it's not going to be good at.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that NC and PL are moving to Teenal at all. So I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's actually probably more renting. So maybe I overstated that. Yeah. So this is the goons are having a lot of success. The plan was yours. Do you want to share credit with anyone, or was it really your plan?
It was entirely my plan. Like no one else had anything to do with it at all. I mean, obviously the individuals are out there farming my little fields for me. Great. But I fundamentally look at this as bring your cows to the field, fence them in appropriately, and tell them where the best grass is and how to utilize that grass. But the rancher is the one that gets the credit of the cows.
Well, this is so funny because it reminds me of the landowner sitting in the castle, and then you have the peasants who are farming and people tending sheep and stuff, and then you have the joust tournaments of the FCs. But at the top of it all, I joke
about this with V. Yeah. Like V was very much into the honorable base joust. He saw it as fundamentally a game against another FC. So it's them playing chess with their fleets, right? And while the players in their fleet were important, and you want your pawns and your rooks and your bishops to be great players, if the person playing those pieces isn't making the right decision, it doesn't matter how good your individuals are. The fleet's going to get creamed. And I always respected that V likes the space jousting. He likes that one-on-one matchup, right? That's not me. I like the empire building. I like to break down the game mechanics to the fundamental levels and reassemble them in the way that is most advantageous to us.
Yeah. Well, let's explore this a little bit. And guys, you guys feel free to come in on this, especially at Larrikin. But I did want to ask the question, is that one of the draws? First of all, I'll make a point that Larrikin had an eloquent statement that, Eve is played in many, many different ways. And so you shouldn't ever assume that the way you're playing it is the way other people like it too, which is a very good point that needs to be made all the time. But looking at the empire building and the mass economics and that kind of, empire building, is that one of the things that drives people to play EVE long term?
It definitely is in our leadership. So I would say the players, let me stipulate that we are definitely a niche player base. Like the amount of experience you need and the amount of overall knowledge and just general intelligence you're going to need to play at that level, that's not for everyone. I get that. But those that do enjoy that, you tend to see in our leadership stick around for a decade. Like those people stay because there's nothing else like that out there in gaming. Like EVE is the only one with that complex socioeconomic and political landscape. No other game is even close. And
Machiavellian too, right? It's a lot of tricking and posturing, and it's a lot of mind games.
It's beyond mind games. Like the meta now is like 4, 5, 6 levels deep sometimes. Like it's very rare there's only a couple levels deep on a meta. Like the MER. When we end up talking about that, that's going to be like one of the few times you can reveal all the meta and peek behind the curtain. But I think people underestimate how deep the meta really is.
Yeah, some people say that it's kind of 1 or 2 levels, but it sounds like these are wheels inside of wheels, as you're known to phrase it.
Yeah, like the way we kind of do within our think tank is we do what we basically call decision trees, which is if Hostile Alliance does X, we do Y, and you usually have the top 3 things that they are most likely to do. Or usually with CCP now is like we tend to not play against other players anymore. We mostly play against CCP for like the last 5 years. And that's not an adversarial way. That's a, hey, let's make sure that what CCP is doing isn't going to just kill us. Like it's not, because they've been pretty open about wanting to nerf goons in the past and, some of our play styles. And sometimes that's been appropriate. I'm not trying to say that they were persecuting us. So we try to make sure that what they're going to do isn't going to impact us in such a negative way that we just collapse or lose a lot of players or people get mad and leave.
Right. So you're trying to make sure that the way the game is going, that you can adapt to it, basically.
Yeah, that's our number. We're like Borg. I mean, if you notice, every time goons ever lost or beaten on anything, we come back way better because we learn. So every time you beat us, we're going to come back better than we were.
Yeah. Well, I think I've noticed that you guys have, and the Goon Swarm alone, this is not the Imperium, has jumped up 7,000 members in the last few months since January, basically 7,000 new members. You're at 27,000 now. And most of those from, I heard from your recruiting person, is individual people coming to it, not corp mergers or corp acquisitions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say that, well, let's get into the meta just a little bit, because this is going to be one of the few times that I can actually reveal things in the meta that's not going to be bad because it's not going to hurt us by revealing it, right? So let's talk about the MER for a second, because this ties into what you just asked. There was a lot of controversy around when I requested that they obfuscate some data, not nerf it, just kind of hide it a little bit. I had requested by quadrant, maybe make mining and broker fees and all that by quadrant.
We're talking about the MER, and this is financial data about what's going on in regions.
Correct. And so that was a very calculated move. So it didn't play out the way I thought it was going to play out. I thought when I brought it up in the CSM meeting that there would be spirited argument in the meeting that would probably be tabled for a later date for more introspection and public comment. But what ended up happening is none of the other CSM really even understood the issue or cared about the issue. So they just went, okay, whatever. And CCP was like, yeah, I see your point, because we were arguing an honest point. Like, you are revealing a great amount of intelligence. But that's not how I expected it to go. I expected to generate some controversy around the request when the notes came out, and there to be a bunch of focus on the MER at the time, because we knew that the MER wasn't accurate. It wasn't remotely accurate. Like, mining was wrong, broker fees was wrong, and it was like one other thing that was super wrong. Now, Quant has since went on to fix that. I've been very forthcoming saying, hey, here's what's wrong. And in my defense, because people are going to say, well, why didn't you tell them then? I did. I told them last summer that shit was wrong. I don't know if they didn't understand what I was saying, if I didn't explain myself correctly. But once they weren't going to change it, we're like, well, it's not really in our best interest to help them change it, because it's only going to reveal things about Goon Swarm, not anyone else. So my motives were basically like generate a bunch of controversy, get a lot of attention on the MER, because I knew eventually it would get fixed. And the ulterior motive was very simple. The MER is the best recruiting tool in the history of EVE. We have CCP telling everyone look how great Goons are. They're number one. You should join Goons.
Well, that's implied. They don't actually say that, right?
I think we can all agree that's what the MER does. Like, it might be an ancillary consequence. I don't think CCP is doing it for that reason, but it is the greatest official recruiting tool ever.
Right. So it's not but I want to make clear, it's not an endorsement by CCP, but basically they're the ones officially saying, look who's doing best in the game, and people want to join success.
It's a scoreboard. Like, that's the best way to distill it.
Yeah. But so what you're saying though is that you meant it to go which way? Both ways? Or you couldn't lose whichever way?
I couldn't lose whichever way. So whether they nerfed it or not, we win. My argument was very honest. Like, I do believe, and still do, that it does communicate too much intelligence about specific areas. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
I see all these write-ups around what the MER means and the information you get from it, and they always ignore like everything relevant. They focus on these stupid like first order effects, and they're not even looking 2 or 3 levels deep. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Battleship, but they have like this buoy system in that movie where like the Japanese have these ocean buoys, and every time the little alien jumps, the water goes up and the buoy goes underwater, so you see where the alien is, right? It's the same thing with the MER. The MER is the buoys, and the big robots are the Supercat fleets. So the MER lets you track Supercat fleet moves. And in this case of this month's MER, you would have had granularity within 5 days of a Supercat move if they had moved at the end of the month. So you see a Supercat fleet moving into Vale, for example. Like, that is retarded. We should not be giving a report that shows you where the Supercat fleets move to. That's just not good gaming.
Yeah, I think you called it out as free intelligence, which is a big topic inside of EVE. What people should know omnisciently and what they should earn, the knowledge they should earn.
Like, see, people keep focusing on, like, I forget his name. There's some trader out there that his motives are, he's at least honest about his motives, that he wants to profit from the data, which I respect. At least he's honest about that. But the data reveals so much to people that know EVE at a deeper level and that have other data that they can cross-reference it, that I don't think people understand how much the MER is really revealing. And it's not in our best interest to really tell them how much it's revealing. But it's one thing to reveal it now, like everyone's kind of, cottoned on to the Supercat tracking thing. Like, I'm sure there's automated ones all over EVE at this point, but there's more. There's probably 3 levels deep in the MER that I struggle with it. Like, from an economic perspective, I love having perfect data, but I already had really, really good data. So is CCP spoon feeding it to everyone worth it? I don't know.
Well, I think the pushback that came, at least from the Meta people who report on the economic news of EVE Online, they have shows that they do, and they want to be able to report the news financially. Without the data, they can't report anything. They'd have to go and find all that, and there's no way for them to do that in a holistic way. So it was a death knell for them not to have current data, because who wants to know about economic news that's 6 months old?
I would agree with that, but I do think there's a middle ground. Like, I do like the delaying idea. Maybe not 6. I think 6 months is indeed too long. 90 days would be appropriate. Maybe 60 days. Like, you want to get it to the point where you have at least a month or more between the time the data is released and the time the event happened. And right now, that is not the case at all. And it would need to be a 60-day delay to even make that the case.
Well, I thought when I was looking at it that maybe the reason for that request, because definitely a lot of people said, oh, they're just doing it for their alliance and that sort of thing. And it kind of looked to me like you were doing it for the good of the game, because it seemed like a very reasonable request. I think a lot of people saw it that way. Other people saw it as you trying to defend something and delve, to hide that, to obscure that you guys were having success, so that you could incubate without getting attacked, that people wouldn't be alarmed that these guys are growing too fast, so we need to take them out before they get too big. But I don't know. I thought about it, and then maybe you were actually trying to hide information so that some of the secret programs that you guys do don't get out into the public in some way, like the Charon building program, where you would build these really heavy ships that took a lot of minerals and blow them up, and it was an insurance fraud kind of scheme.
Yeah, we had been prepping that one for months, and I think, I don't know if this is NDA or not, Larrikin, so forgive me. But I had been telling CCP, like, hey, pointing out, like, hey, CCP, have you looked at insurance numbers? And I think Larrikin was the one I was telling, like, hey, we kind of got a problem here, but if CCP isn't going to react quickly or doesn't consider it a problem at the time, then we're still going to use it. Like, we're still going to abuse it. Like, it's until CCP decides it's not appropriate for the game, you use it, right? But no, it wasn't so much like hiding what goons were doing. Is that we fundamentally believe that this is too revealing. Like, from a individual level, like, I don't care at all about the aggregate numbers, and I never lobbied for a nerf of any individual data, just obscuring it enough to where you can't pin individual data on a specific alliance or region. That's all I was asking for.
Larkin, I don't know if you're still there, but
I am, mate.
It's a lot of information coming through. But if you want to answer, I'll give you a chance. If not, it's not. We can come back to it.
Look, I don't have anything sort of to really add to the point about the data being public. I can see both sides of the argument. I think in a perfect world with unlimited development resources, I'd probably prefer some sort of in-game mechanism to get this sort of information that then can be fought over. You can try and put up, I don't know, I'm just postulating crazy ideas here, which we definitely won't do, but maybe you can put up listening posts to try and figure out some of this information, and conversely, you can go and destroy those. But yeah, I see both sides of the argument. I don't have particularly strong feelings either way.
Yeah, I thought there were going to be listening posts that were going to be like, that was one of the structures that was going to like the Intel structure, basically.
Yeah, but exactly what they do hasn't been designed. So.
Oh, but they're still on the slate. They're still there.
That is something we've talked about in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to put it. Something we talked about in the past. You didn't answer, but okay.
No, I didn't answer your question,
Yeah,
because I'm not on the team working on structures. So.
Very right, but skillful work there. The thing about the Charon thing was, I thought this was kind of smart, and this happens all the time. So from what I'm told, that insurance is actually based on a number of factors that kind of lasts a long time. So if the price for a ship is, let's say, 100 ISK for the last 3 months, and all of a sudden mining goes crazy, and you can build that ship for 50 ISK, then you can build that ship for 50 ISK, destroy it, and get 100 ISK back from the insurance. Is that basically how insurance fraud works in EVE?
Yeah, it's generally only about 15% return at most, though. But generally what you're doing is you're using the windows of opportunity between the time CCP runs their update script. So typically that runs on Fridays once a month, but in insurance, it doesn't do that. Insurance, it can be like quarterly. I forget what it is, but it's a significant lag, where there was a time where I don't think CCP updated insurance prices for a long period of time. Interestingly enough, like CCP, I think, saw fraud really taking off and immediately nerfed insurance. Like, they nerfed the crap out of it. I think they nerfed a Chiron by like 200 mil or something like that. It was a significant nerf, which was appropriate, like they should have, but it's still profitable to do.
Yeah, just not as much as it was before. And they did nerf it pretty quickly after your announcement to the rest of Goonswarm, I guess, right? Do you hold? Yeah.
I think it was that week. They nerfed it. I think they actually nerfed it before I had written the post, but not posted it because I ran out of time like that week before. And so by the time I posted, I think it already went in. And we hadn't rerun the insurance numbers that day.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because you said you had that relationship when something's out there, you guys can complain about it. And by you guys, I mean Goonswarm, saying, hey, this thing, have you looked into it? It's kind of broken. And then you say, all right, let's just do it with 1,000 people. And then you say that CCP sees that and says, oh, we got to fix that. And then they fix it. That's
the old joke. Like, there is no more effective way to get something nerfed than for us to abuse it, period, hands down.
Now, do you think it's personal, or do you think it's just that you guys have so many players that they have to, at that point, recognize that at scale, the game is breaking if we don't fix it?
There's definitely been times in the past that we thought it was personal, but not in recent history with this new dev team. I don't believe that. I think it's not just scale, it's the efficiency and the planning we put into when we abuse something. So we take it kind of to the nth degree, like, like taking it, well, I don't want to say that phrase, but it's basically to the point where when we give the blueprint to all of EVE to how to most effectively abuse something, everyone will start doing it. So you might as well nerf it when we start doing it. Because we get a lot of cargo culting from the rest of Null and the rest of E.
Well, okay? So this I wanted to explore, and then we can move on to Blood Raiders and bring Larrikin in a bigger way. The things that you're responsible for in EVE history, like what are some of those things? Some of the highlights.
Oh God, I was the one that when Weezer wanted to do some sort of interdiction, I had already done the research on Oxy. I did the Burn Jita. I was just done the Forex. I have led all the goons in the PI investments that CCP has famously said, backlogged for years. That was basically all goons. I mean, there's a laundry list. The Pax Amaria, I was the one that kind of finally got that nerve after getting goons to pile into it. Like, there's a long list of crap that I've been involved in, but I've always been in the shadows. We never went public until the Forex thing, which I still regret, because no one even knew we existed, right? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world he didn't exist. Like, that's kind of the way we functioned, because at the time, there's no upside to revealing yourself. And even now there still isn't, but I've kind of come around to the Mitanni's way of thinking, which is there's no other group like us out there, and there's no one else like me out there right now playing at this level. So what is the danger of communicating something that may bring more players to EVE? Because after seeing some of the presentations at this most recent Fans Fest, I believe that we're doing a disservice to those that may be into economic and meta gameplay by not showing it a little more. When we can. Like, there's a lot of times some things can be OPSEC, but let's not do presentations on how to bottom feed the market. Like, that's not compelling gameplay that's going to bring people into EVE, right? It's the big scam, it's the huge fleet fight, it's the Forex. Like, it's those kind of things that people go, wow, I want to play a game that deep. And that's what I'm trying to err on the side of a little more now.
So I think what you're saying, if I'm taking it correctly, is that instead of talking about the economy as a boring subject, that you talk about the drama involved with being able to trick people or to manipulate in a large-scale way or to influence the world. That's what really brings people in.
Yeah, things that people would love to do in real life markets, but they can't because there's a lot of laws around that. You can do it in EVE. Like, oh, you want to manipulate this market, so how about you go send like 1,000 dudes to it and shoot like 600 billion worth of ISK in a weekend and manipulate that market? Like, how about that, right? It'd be in the real life equivalent. It'd be like shooting all the freighters going to the LA terminal. It would cause chaos, and that's some of the things you can do in EVE. And if you don't highlight that depth of gameplay, you don't attract those kind of players.
Well, that was one of the funny things about the casino war. You guys were getting, I think CO2 got whomped and lost some Machariel fleets. And when you guys had lost a bunch of Machariel fleets, the opposition went and bought up all the Machariels in Jita. Like,
he got stuck with them too. Like, that story never came out. We laughed our ass off because he bought up like 400 plus, and he got stuck with all of them. And the price crashed because we had a stockpile. So one of the things that people don't realize, one of the things that the Jubal does is, we know about the doctrine before our players know about it. Like, the FCs will say, hey, here's the doctrine we're thinking about. What do you think from a finance perspective? Is there any bottlenecks here that we need to be aware of? Is there any problems with this doctrine? And so we'll spend maybe a month buying that doctrine up, building it, whatever we need to do. So we'll typically be sitting on massive stockpiles of multiple whelps. So like, any individual whelp is not going to hurt us. It probably would CO2, to be fair. But it was funny to watch that guy do that. Like, I'm rich and I'm going to go hurt goons. It's like, no, you just got stuck with it and cost yourself like tens of billions of ISK.
Well, to be fair, he owned trillions, so it didn't hurt him that much. But it is kind of funny the way that you guys counter moved by having stuff in stock already. So this is what's interesting, though, right? Like, market manipulation, moves and counter moves, strategy on an empire level.
Yeah, like our supply chain logistics, no one touches us on that. So we tend to make the assumption that if our adversary is as smart as us. Now, it's never actually been true, like a little ego stroking there, but we have to play that way because eventually someday someone's going to get lucky, or some other group's going to rise, and it will be true. So you just make the moves that would protect yourself from people like you. That's all you do is like, how would I fuck myself? Oh, let me prevent that.
Right. And so you're really thinking all this stuff out, looking at the decision trees, and actually putting in a ton of work on the strategy.
Yeah, we spend just an insane amount of hours just theory crafting in Jabber. Not as much as we used to, because we're literally kind of in this quiet period where we're just executing plans we made years ago. So there's not a lot to do right now. Like, even like the refiners that are coming, we already had 4 plans plan A, B, C, and D. CCP went with plan A. So we just go, okay, here's plan A, dust it off, and here's what we're going to be doing right after they come in, and here's what we're going to be doing in the 3 months before it comes in.
All right. So what plans haven't come together? I mean, it sounds like a perfect world so far.
I would say the only one recent history was minerals, because we never thought that refiners would take this. Well, I guess one of us did. We didn't think it would take this long for CCP to get the new structures in. So some of the investments we've been sitting on for a couple of years, and we would expect already to be cashing out by now. But generally, all our plans come to fruition. It just might not be the first plan. It might be the second or the third. We kind of have a joke in our investment channel, GSGIS, where I always tell people, have a plan B. Like if plan A doesn't work for the thing you manipulated or the thing you invested in, you better have a plan B for that, whether it's to produce off it, whether it's to take a loan out on that stuff and crash it and stick the guy with the loan, whatever. You have a plan B.
Well, okay, but what about the obvious? When you guys got wrecked in Declan during the casino war, like you guys did you see that coming? Did you know it was going to happen? Did you like gameplay?
Well, I had been warning for at least 2 years that was the one scenario that could happen, because I had been advocating for having a very robust financial wing, because eventually the finance people get so rich, and we're well past that at this point, that they can change Eve, right? You have so much that throwing away trillions is not a big deal. So we always knew that was a substantial possibility. We didn't think it'd be like necessarily the casino stuff. We thought it would actually be someone like it, not Gevlin himself because he was an idiot, but someone much better than that would be out there that would decide, I'm going to quit Eve and I'm going to go out spending 10 trillion to finance some huge war. But think about what it took. It took all of Eve, quite literally. It took basically unlimited ISK. And it took a period of time where we would be vulnerable before the next system came in. So all three of those things had to be true to result in what happened. And even then, it took 6 months, right? And it ended up being our members that really just wanted to go have some place to kind of, make some money because they want to buy their Plex to really influence that decision. And so now you don't have unlimited ISK. You're not going to get all of Eve again. And we're fortified more than we've ever been, and our income's higher than it's ever been. So, yeah, have fun.
All right. Well, let's actually, before we start, I always wanted to ask this. Who do you see as peers? I've asked you this before, but financially, do you see any peers out there?
No, I'm sure there's people that are rich. Like I always say, but rich doesn't mean anything in Eve. You got to have power. You got to have the depth of knowledge. No, and I don't think it's necessarily that there's not people out there that they aren't smart enough. It's that if you don't have access to the meta at the highest level, if you don't have access to the data of as many people as we do, if you don't have the history of knowledge of that data and everything that's happened in Eve that we do, you just can't play at that level. It's unfortunate. I would love to have peers. I look for them all the time because I want to recruit them, because I think it's more fun to have plans with guys that can understand the plan rather than just having to go in our highest level chamber, spend an hour trying to explain why I want to do something and have everyone question you. And it's and they don't even understand what they're questioning on. That's kind of a lonely way to play. And it sucks, but I wish there were, but I haven't ran into them.
Because in a weird way, that's your only audience, right? I mean, you can't put these plans out in public, so you can only really impress the guys in the room.
Pretty much, yeah.
And it's only impressive if they understand what you're talking about.
Exactly. It's what's the point of being this huge evil genius when you're you don't have an audience? So I've only got a few people to get in the Jubal to understand it now. And so a lot of times when we start talking in the kind of the highest chamber, with Mittens and everybody, they don't even understand why I'm advocating. Yeah, I can explain why, but they still don't get it. If you don't know how all the pieces fit together, you're not going to understand the argument. So it took me months to win the 1DQ argument. I mean, months. And even when I did, we start moving and I had seeded the market and everything. I had this guy in Goonswarm, or one of the other corps, swear that it was conspiracy by me to have all the orders move into the other market so that I could make money because my orders were already there. That's what he believed. And he escalates to his little corp CEO and they try to escalate in and we just laugh at them. And then I spend the next 2 months just face fucking his markets personally just to prove something. And then he shut up and he got the point. But yeah, it's no, I'm working on an economic plan here. You're just some little market arbitrage guy that no one cares about.
All right, I respect the aggression, but dial back the descriptive part if you will. Yeah. So, all right. So who out there like? I was going to ask you who's not getting it. Who are the idiots out there that are not getting it? But
the usual suspects, like the tests, like ever since they left deck, like they've always tried to cargo cult what we do, and they've never been good at it because they don't understand what they're trying to cargo cult, right? If you don't understand the theory, it's not going to work because you're not going to make the right moves because not every region is different. Every alliance is slightly different. Like you can't just mimic and think you're going to be successful. Like you have to understand what's happening. So I would say they're the biggest example because they have numbers. They have a decent structure that should be able to accomplish this. They have cohesion. They have the right mix of players. They fail at execution.
Well, and they have enough players to kind of get that same data that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, them and Horde do. Like as soon as you pass probably 7-8K, you should be able to do it, I think, provided you set up the right structure and you have the right feeds and things like that, but they just don't.
Yeah. Well, you have been around 5-6 years or more, longer than them, but I wonder if that history, how much that actually plays into it.
Not a lot. Right.
Well, you have one of the biggest challenges in your area, the Blood Raiders, the new AI. Let's actually talk about that, Larkin. Can you tell us a bit about the new AI?
A smooth segue, Mineral.
It was until you called attention to it.
Sorry, Chico.
That's all right. But that is a big challenge because it's a whole new way for the NPCs to really fight back. And it looks like they're fighting back pretty well.
I'm really disappointed. I expected this thing to be in reinforce already. Just no one's really.
You know why it isn't? You want me to tell you?
I've got a fair, decent idea, but let me hear your theory, mate.
This is the absolute truth. Breaking news. It's not sexy. It's not in our space. It's our ally space. We're not allowed to run
it.
Whoa.
Yep, that's the truth.
Space honor. You're not a jouster.
Allowed to run it, okay?
Well, if they ask us to come in, then we can go run it. But right now, it's in their space. It's theirs to run.
Fair enough.
Well, what that sounds like to me, though, if you don't mind me saying, same with the CSM thing, is it's kind of like narrative after the event. Like you're kind of saying, we always meant it to be this way, that sort of thing. Like you guys could run it if you wanted to, right? If you guys were a dominant power, or is diplomacy really that strong inside of Imperium?
Diplomacy is that strong. Corpus Diplomatic is the one that made the call, and I kind of agree with them. Like they have this fundamental viewpoint, not really leaking anything here, that if you're going to have allies, you have to treat them as allies. You can't treat them as pets. So if we wanted to treat them as pets, we could go in there, but we don't treat our allies that way. And Corpus Diplomatic made the call, and it's theirs to make. If it was in our space, that should already be reinforced.
All right. So what's been going on, Larkin, with this thing? What have you guys seen? I'm sure you're watching it closely.
Yeah, we're watching it very closely. And it's been pretty interesting. I think it was Red Alliance tried a rattlesnake fleet with some Bassies and Semis supporting it. That didn't turn out so well for them. I think they lost about 15, maybe 16 rattlesnakes plus some logistics. And then Test Alliance came along with a bomber fleet and some Jackdaws. The Jackdaws didn't do much, but they did successfully bomb off about 200, maybe 250 odd Blood Raider NPCs. So that was kind of cool. And since then, it's actually been pretty quiet. Disappointingly quiet.
Oh, you don't see our fleets there, do you?
Are they coming?
I've seen a couple of goons dying to it, but no fleets. No.
That's how you don't tell the truth. There's no fleet that showed up, period.
Well, it could be that you guys just don't know how to defeat it.
Yeah, that's it. Like, we totally didn't know how to defeat it on CC before it launched.
Oh, well, did you have some success on CC?
Yeah, they figured it out. Like, it's all it is like, oh, speaking of V, it's just a rehash of a tactic V used on some fleet fight a long time ago.
So what's the secret?
I'm not going to reveal that. Asher will probably shank me.
So, Larkin, this is an interesting question. So does it stays in that system, which is out of Goon's reach, apparently, until
but out of Goon's reach, out of Goon's area of effectiveness, perhaps?
Yeah, or their contractual obligations.
Contractual obligations, yeah.
Right. But what happens? It stays there until somebody defeats it. So it's never going to move into Goon territory until
it doesn't stay. It won't stay there forever. But it will stay there for quite a while. I'm not gonna say how long, just because I don't think I should. But it will stay there for quite a while. Eventually, it'll move if no one decides that it's worth taking on. I can't see that happening, honestly. Like, as if.
Someone they'll eventually say, "Hey, come help!" Like, maybe in a week. I don't know, but not the first weekend. They're not going to ask for help.
Like, it also just could be run by another party that runs in and just smashes it or something as well. I mean, yeah. Well, I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, it seems to me to be a wall that a ship could throw itself against, or a cliff that a ship can ram itself against. You're not like, this thing seems unbeatable.
It's not unbeatable. That's insane.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
I saw some dudes run it pretty successfully on Sissy. I mean, I've got some pretty good ideas on how I would do it. Unbeatable is just not the case. I think it's strong and cool, but not unbeatable. I think actually the bigger threat is other players.
Sitting there and like sand people on the mountainside farming you as you try to get by. Basically,
yeah. Like there's some stuff you could totally do to beat this, but you aren't just fighting the Blood Raiders. You're fighting anyone else that wants to stick their noses into it.
Yeah,
I would just want to drop like 100 inertia stabbed Archons, or whatever the fastest carrier is. It's not gonna be an Archon, to make the site spawn a ton more dudes, then warp off, let the guys running it deal with the huge respawn. Like that's all I want to do if I ever get the opportunity.
Well, and I should have said Tusken Raider, not Sand People. I think Sand People's derogatory towards the Tusken people. Yeah, okay, so there hasn't been as much carnage as you were hoping for, but it was discovered. How quickly was it discovered?
It took about, I want to say 2 days, maybe a day and a half for it to be found. There was a little bit of confusion, actually. Here's a fairly interesting story. So as part of the update, we made some changes to the way haulers work on mining operations, not just Blood Raider haulers, but all haulers. Effectively, they look for a station belonging to their own corporation in the system, and then warp to that and dock there. And if they can't find one belonging to their corporation, they find one belonging to like someone who's blue with them, or someone who's neutral with them, as long as they're not hostile. And so in systems around there, they were finding like Goon citadels and stations and stuff like that. And because they weren't set as red, they would warp to them and dock in them.
Oh.
Yeah, they're kind of ignoring ACLs at the moment, but we're going to fix that.
It took us a while to figure that out. And then there was more confusion because Goons are like, haulers, let's shoot them. Like, oh, damn it. So then we had to wait for them to respawn, to trail them. So we had to tell Wiz and broadcasting, quit shooting the haulers.
We're supposed to follow them back to base.
So they don't jump between systems either. I think some people might have been a little bit confused by that. So the haulers only jump, like only go in this one system they're in. They don't go to gates and go through gates or anything like that.
So if you're scouting around and you see them, then you know that that's a TO, that building complex is in that system. That's the correct system. So you can actually...
It may be in that system because they just do spawn naturally as well. But there will always be a mining operation in the system with the shipyard. Yeah,
you can't just look for haulers. Like, they're everywhere. So we had to, like, try to see the hauler and see where he's warping to and make sure that's not the Satoyo, because there's a lot of them. And then if you shoot them, there's this long respawn time, and you don't know, are they not going to respawn in that system because that's not the Satoyo, or do you have to wait here? It was a mess.
There is an argument to be made that, like, one of the ways to find them would be shooting them and then basically sort of looking to see if they come back, because they will definitely come back in that system, and they're less likely to come back in other systems, but not always as well. Just to throw a bit of a spanner in the works, especially systems with Blood Raider stations, they're much more likely to come back into those systems as well. So
yeah, we had that internal debate, and I think we just decided not shooting them would be quicker.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Mostly due to respawn times, because you have to wait so long. And yeah.
I think the CFC also spent a lot of time, which probably makes more sense now based on what you just said earlier, looking in Delve and not in period basis. But given your lack of access to period basis, maybe that makes sense.
Yeah, like we focused on Delve and Aquarius where we can actually run them.
Yep, that makes total sense.
Yeah, so the Satios are out there for Blood Raiders. People are finding them and attacking them. And what's this tell us about the future? By the way, there was a good interview with you, and you laid out a bunch of details. I don't want to ask you all those questions all over again, and you can catch that on High Drag podcast. I think did a 4-hour interview with you, which was really good. But this is the beginning, and people should know this if they don't. This is the beginning of the AI permeating throughout EVE. But we're not just talking about big structures like this. You may see smaller engagement opportunities, I imagine.
Yeah, we haven't defined. We haven't sort of decided exactly what other opportunities we're going to use it with. We're looking at a bunch of options and playing with some prototypes and whatnot. I mean, honestly, at the moment, we're very focused on just working on the Blood Raider shipyards. We know that there's going to be ways that they get bugged out, and we're going to have to sort them out. So, like, we're going to be pretty focused on that for a little bit. But we're very keen to expand the use of the systems that we made for the Blood Raider shipyard into smaller content and different content. So that might not be structure-based. It might be much smaller structures or deployables or something. I don't know. I'm just postulating here. But yeah, I think you're going to see content along this style with smarter, like better reacting NPCs more common in New Eden.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of excitement around there. One of the things that you talked about was that the static type of NPE experience isn't going away anytime soon. For those people that were worried about this new AI replacing everything else.
Yeah, it's something that's been asked me a bunch of times, and we understand that not every player first environment experience should be like high stress, on the limit sort of thing. Like there's a place for relaxed PvE, and whatever we do, we need to cater to multiple people's play styles.
Yeah. All right, we're at the 1 hour mark. I wanted to ask the audience in the live chat again, if you want to catch this show live, it's 1500 on Saturdays. If you guys have a question for the professor, Seamus, who's on here, go ahead and write a very, very complicated question if you can, that he will try to answer. Not to stump him, but if there's something you want to know deep into the mechanics, he's the guy to ask. So go ahead and write that inside a chat, and we'll pick one of those questions and talk about that in just a few minutes. All right. So, but here's the bigger thing is that this is in a place with very well organized. This new thing, the Blood Raiders, the new AI, this giant PvE, endeavor, is in the place with people who are probably most prepared to do it. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say. Maybe other groups are just as prepared. Like, is that? I know it's just a coincidence because you had it planned before the Imperium moved down to Delve and stuff. But are you enthusiastic about like the coincidence?
No. I guess that sounds a little bit terrible.
Doesn't really matter.
No, honestly, it just doesn't. It's just not that important to us. I think regardless of where it was, we were going to see big fleets and small fleets running this, and I think where it is now, we are going to see big fleets and like smaller sized fleets running it as well. So I think it's cool that that's in a spot where there's a bunch of players that are certainly competent and will jump in there. And but I actually don't think it really mattered which system, which regions it was going to be in. We were going to see that.
Yeah, I thought it might have been a lucky coincidence, but it really it doesn't matter. I think other groups might have been just as prepared.
Yeah, and I also think that there's groups that, if it was in a very quiet region, there might be groups that would deploy to take advantage of this for a little while. We'll see, I guess. We've talked about future plans to look at other pirate shipyards. We said that in the keynote at FanFest. I mean, I'm not announcing anything, but you know, I expect over time we'll see these in more areas of space as well.
Yeah. Well, speaking of events, you're going to be seen at Eve Down Under.
Actually, next Friday, or next Saturday, I am going to Fins on a Ship, a Fin Fest, which is going to be a crazy experience.
That's the one where a bunch of Eve players actually sail together.
Yeah, we all jump on a cruise ship from Finland. I can't remember the name of the port, and then go sail, or I guess cruise to Stockholm, and then turn around and go back. And so it's just going to be 24 hours of madness, which should be pretty fun. And then I'm going to Eve Down Under at the end of July. That's great. Will we be seeing you at Eve Vegas for the American listeners? I certainly hope so, but I don't know yet. It's not up to me. Too far ahead. All right. Well, Aerith, this is kind of funny. We'll never see you at an Eve meet, will we?
Maybe a Vegas one, but it's hard to get time off, obviously. So I got to spend 2 at the summits now. And I'll usually spend another one, I guess, for the Goon retreat to a resort in Cancun. So that kind of takes up a lot of time. Plus, I'm going to Jamaica. That's a lot of vacation. Yeah.
And I say that in a tongue-in-cheek way because you disguise yourself on camera whenever you get a chance to be photographed or videotaped. And one of the funnier moments was seeing how you were going to deal with it when they did these summit reviews and they videotaped 4 or 5 CSM members at the same time, kind of updating you on that day, what happened that day. And there you were with a mask that made you look like Rorschach from The Watchmen.
Yeah, that mask was actually a very thoughtful gift from Jintan. He had it with him, coincidentally. I didn't know that was going to occur. I didn't plan for that. I didn't have the mask with me. He's like, hey, here's a mask. And he gave it to me the first day. I'm like, sweet, this is cool. And I just went with it. So now it's going to be a total gimmick. I'll use a different mask each time, I hope.
That's awesome. I thought that was funny. And it's also funny that if you're spotted in a picture, you're always obscured in some way, like you're looking down or your head's behind somebody else, or it's very mysterious.
What if I was the Mittani? Wouldn't that be cool?
If you're the same person? I don't know. One of the pictures we can see how tall you are, and I don't know if you guys are the same height. Yeah, there you are on video. It really looks like
down because I'm trying to look short, even shorter. I'm pretty short, but I'm trying to even look shorter in there.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, these things look like prisoner videos. It was very jarring. The optics are not terrific on this, by the way, Lark. You might want to put more light on them or do something. Light them up side by side.
Don't look at me. I'm not the camera operator.
You got that CCP on your shirt. All right. Hey, Larkin, is there do CCP guys, just as a protocol thing, not want to talk about when they were players?
No, I'm pretty happy to talk about that. That's fine.
Can you tell us who you were and where you played before you were at CCP?
I used to play as a fleet commander in the Australian time zone. I was one of the organizers for Eve Down Under. I was in NC for a while, in PL for a while, and also ran my own alliance for a little while.
Yeah,
I lost a super to Brave Newbies. That's covered.
I saw that happen real time.
It was pretty fun. I just screwed up.
Yeah, you heard. I think you actually.
Thanks, Jay Amazingness, just calling it out in Twitch chat. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, I think you hit the wrong button and you ended up warping to a gate, and you're like, "What the?" Yeah.
Yeah, we were pretty well caught, and just slowly trying to clear tackle and get out. And I was dual boxing Aeons, and I was aligning, and on one of the screens I hit warp, not align. Completely my fault, so no big deal.
There you went. I felt bad for you because I knew you just moved to Pandemic Legion, so I thought, well, there's a mistake from an experienced player. Which one did you like better, PL or NC?
I think both of them had their good points and their bad points, Matterall.
Just so diplomatic.
How do you possibly answer that question?
Which one did you
just look
like
at where
better?
he moved from to where he moved to.
I just want to hear it. I want to hear it because I think you liked NC better, but I'm just saying. All right, no bias there.
Oh, as in Goons for a little while too, actually. That's probably
What?
not very well known.
Oh, wait, the plot thickens.
It was
When
a
in-
long time ago, and when I say in Goons, I mean I had a ratting alt there, and I kind of spied a bit. That was about it.
You spied for him or against them?
Against, I was fighting them at the time.
Oh, okay. So you were there as a spy.
I was ratting mainly, but yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, quick little segment that we do before we get back into player news. And this is Doctrine, and then we do an Ask the Professor. So Doctrines is basically, I'll explain it again because we haven't had it for a couple weeks since I've been gone. Pothny was gone too. We take something that's popular out there and we tell you why it's popular. Go ahead, Pothny. What do you got today?
Okay, so I actually wanted to look at the fits from the doctrine used by, I think it was Dreamfleet that ran the new Blood Raider site. They brought in a fleet of rattlesnakes supported by apparently scimitars and bazzies. I'd only seen the scimitar males, so I assumed it was just scimitars. But regardless, so you're looking to bash a big structure against Blood Raiders. So that means you're going to be facing newts, certainly from the Blood Raiders, possibly from the structure as well, depending on how it's fit. And you're going to be facing EM therm damage. You know, Blood Raiders, they like their lasers. So in the Rattlesnake, this is a reasonable choice. Very high tank. You have two weapon systems that are capless and project very, very well, which means that you can clear the site without having to move around much. You will very rarely be out of projection range. The fit for the Rattlesnake was pretty reasonable. You notice they added a heavy cap booster to help with that newts. They do have the adaptive invuln, which is a fairly heavy cap requirement to increase the resistance of the Rattlesnake, but they do have the passive more damplier than damage in the lows. I thought the Rattlesnake was a fairly reasonable choice, good choice, especially when the shield slaves, I think they're actually going to be called slaves, come in.
They are.
They're going to buff up their EHP, so reasonable choice. However, when looking at the logistics, I think that choosing a scimitar is going to be fairly unintelligent, in that you do have T2 Minmatar resists. Perfect sense against lasers, because T2 Minmatar are very high EM, the next highest is thermal. However, the Scimitar and the Aneros Armor are the two ships that use local cap regeneration to be able to apply their reps. That means that they are extraordinarily weak to newts and Scimitar, especially because you don't have spare mid slots for cap injection, or even cap batteries to minimize that. Instead, you're going to find yourself capped out. So if we look at the fit here, we've got a Scimitar with 3 large reps and an MWD plus tank. So the moment that even gets a tiny newt on it, it's completely useless. So I would say that looking at this from a very broad, how am I going to approach this issue, knowing little about it unless I've spammed it on Sissy like Goons and some others have, is I would definitely go for the cap chaining basilisks, as even though they tend to be less popular in nullsec use for several reasons, in this specific case, I think that having that cap chain makes you a lot more stable against the new pressure you're going to receive from the Blood Raiders. So this doctrine session, if you will, is not necessarily looking at a fit and why it's popular. I want to talk today, at least, more about you have a problem that you are fielding a fleet against. What are the general ideas and concerns you have to have when designing your doctrine? Because fleet doctrine design is a super interesting discussion to have, and you're always designing your fleet for purpose. You don't just have a general bunch of ships to do general things. That's not the case for anything. So even with the case for fleets that can be very general, like, you know, your AHACs that are good against a broad range of things, they still have a specific design and a specific purpose and a specific use for everyone that uses them.
Great, thank you very much. Larkin, did you want to comment on that?
No, I think Rattlesnake's like a terrible choice. I mean, I kind of guess drop over a little to armor, because then you get the natural EM thermal resist. Of course, like pushing your tank to EM thermal, which is what you want when you're fighting the Blood Raiders, is going to leave you nice and open to any players that come along and want to ruin your party.
Yeah, yeah.
This was pretty good.
Hey, do you have you said you had a way of a way that you would try to defeat the Blood Raiders. Do you want to describe that?
No, I don't matter at all.
Okay, that's surprising. All right. People just have to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm actually super excited to see what they do. I'm sure that we're going to have to make changes to our AI over time as people come up with unique, cool ways of tricking the AI.
You've been there now for 2 years. How often do EVE players surprise you?
Oh, like every day.
Yeah. Like
I'm not saying that flippantly. Like, that's just true. I'm constantly surprised by EVE players. Like, every time I'm like, that was pretty creative. I don't think I'll sit the very next day, man.
Yeah. That's one thing. I've been looking lately at a lot of old videos. And actually, I was talking to this other guy. It's brilliant. This guy, basically, we opened up the Verite influence map, and we started playing it 5 seconds at a time. And the guy had been playing since 2003 and had not a photographic memory, but he remembered corporation names. He remembered battle points, what systems they were in. And he remembered like popular players of the time. And we're talking 10, 12 years ago. So we were going through it. And I'm going to record that segment at some point and put it out because I just thought it was interesting to go back. But I found myself getting super excited about EVE in a way that hadn't happened in a while, just by looking at the map and where people were situated and the amount of combat that was going on.
There's so much amazing like history, and I think back to like the first time I FC'd a big fleet, right? It was horrible, and I got most of us killed. We were all in like a kitchen sink battle cruiser fleet fighting in Providence. But I just think back to that feeling, and I can totally understand why players go and join new player groups and try and assist new players, because you kind of get that like that same sort of excited, heart in your throat sort of like feeling from like hearing these new players getting super excited about seeing a ship for the first time or doing something cool for the first time. It's insane.
Yeah, if I think back at the moments that stick out in my head, they're very simple, like just undocking and seeing 4 or 5 battleships fighting outside the dock in Lowsec. And I mean, I literally called my wife over and said, "Come look at this. This is really rare." Yeah. This is a while ago, of course.
I mean, I remember the first time I saw a Titan, which was insane. And then I remember like a couple of weeks later asking the group that owned the Titan if we could get them to bridge a freightering, because we were trying to get an iHub in or something to anchor it. And they were like, "Yeah, we can do that, but it's going to cost you $1 billion ISK." And like the entire corporation I was in was just like, "That's insane. That's so much money. We can't possibly pay that. We'll just fly it through. It's fine."
We'll just fly. We'll fly coach. Oh, it seems like that's still a lot of money for some people, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
We report news. Yeah, if you're not Aerith. If we talk about numbers when we report stuff, it's really from a jaded perspective of, if it's not 40 billion or 100 billion, then why talk about this battle? And it's too bad, because the best and most memorable things for me never reach that kind of numbers or importance. In fact, those battles were the most boring. Very forgettable to me was, well, let's just talk about the Casino War. Like, those battles they're forgettable. They're only memorable because they were important in a war, but they were torture to be in.
Yeah, some of the coolest battles, like some of the ones that I have the fondest memories of, like the first couple of times I was in a fleet that properly pulled off the old Darkside kiting Drake fleet. Like, this is a pretty old fleet now, but they would run in with like 20 dudes or 30 dudes in Drakes and some logistics, and they would fight against 100, 150 people, just kiting them out. Like, this is not advanced tactics anymore. It's pretty simple when you think back on it. But like the first time we pulled that off, where you're fighting, 30 dudes versus 100, just in Tech 1 battle cruisers and kitchen sink coming after you. It was so awesome. It was such an awesome experience.
Yeah. Oh, like it doesn't even have to be that intricate or, like such a success. I remember just the feeling of how we had invaded AAA space and like 2010, and how starving we were that we didn't even have like enough micro warp drives. So when we killed something, we would literally fight over the loot to try to get their micro warp drive. That kind of we're suffering here, not even able to get through the pipe because we can't propel ourselves fast enough to get past the enemies. And I don't know, those kinds of moments are set up. I really long for that kind of stuff again. Now it's just a matter of like deposit your body, add to the numbers, and go through this wormhole and fight something. And wasn't that great fun? Well, I don't know. I don't think those are memorable.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of agree. It's like those fights where you were actually shaking and finding it hard to talk. Like those are the ones I remember, not the 1,000 versus 1,000 stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not cool. Some people totally love that, and I loved the first couple of those I got into. Like I lost it, but yeah.
Last thing, secretly, what's the magic there? Is it it's the importance of something, isn't it? Like that seems to be what makes you remember something.
I think the magic is different for everyone, but for me it was that this mattered. Either it mattered because like if we screwed it up, then we were losing like what our investment in the ships, or it mattered because we were trying to build an empire or destroy an empire, or it mattered because like if I screwed it up, then a lot of people lost their ships. Like it was the actions or the decisions I made affected a lot of people, and that I think it all comes down to it mattering. And if I think that's some of the magic of Eve, that it kind of matters. It matters, right? Like people have put hard work in to get that, and your decisions matter. They have consequence.
Yeah. I think, we should explore that on a different show when we have more time. We're coming to the end of the show. I wanted to move over to Ask the Professor, and I have a question. Can you tell us about war decks?
Certainly. So this is an explanation about how the war declaration mechanic works in EVE Online. So this explanation is mostly aimed at newer players. Some of the audience has been in the game for a while, so you probably already know this. But for the benefit of the beginners, normally, when you're traveling around in high security space, if somebody attacks you unprovoked, which is to say you don't have a criminal flag on you, you don't have a suspect flag on you, your security status is not -5 or lower, and they're not engaged in a limited engagement with you. If somebody attacks you unprovoked, Concord comes around and blows up their ship. This may not necessarily happen fast enough to save your ship, but the aggressor is completely destroyed. In low security, if somebody attacks you unprovoked, they just lose some security status and they gain a suspect flag. And if this happened on grid with a station or Stargate, then the permanent guns near the station and Stargate start shooting at the attacker. Null security, anything goes. With a war declaration, a player, corporation, or alliance can pay Concord a weekly fee, which ranges somewhere between 50 and 500 million ISK per week, depending on conditions. They can pay a weekly fee to declare war against another player, corporation, or alliance. You cannot war deck an NPC entity. So a corporate alliance can pay a fee to declare war against another corporate alliance. Once the fee is paid, notifications go out to both sides saying that a war is going to start in 24 hours. Once that 24 hours passes, the war is live, and both sides can shoot at each other without loss of security status or Concord intervention. Additionally, any ships that are killed on either side of the conflict, normally when a player's ship is destroyed by another player, a kill mail is generated. And you can find that in-game in character log. Let me double check this. Character sheet the characters section. Is that correct? No, I'm sorry. Character sheet, the interactions section, the combat log tab. And directly underneath that, you can find show losses and show kills. By the way, for show kills, I believe only one person is going to get a particular victim's kill mail in the in-game interface. But anyway, when one player destroys another player's ship, a kill mail is generated. If that happens to be part of a war, then the kill mails are also tabulated in the war report for that particular war. You can see what wars you're currently involved in-game by going to Neocom menu, Social, Corporation. This opens up the corporation window. You can then go to the Wars tab, the Our Wars sub-tab, and you can see a list of all wars that you're currently involved in, or it will explicitly state your corp or alliance is not involved in any wars. If you're interested in wars that don't involve you, you can go to the All Wars tab, and then there will be a search term input box on the right-hand side, and you can type in the name of the corp or alliance in question. Be aware that if a corporation is in, and if a player corporation is in a player alliance, then it's the player alliance that's going to be at war. So taking EVE University as an example, you're not going to find anything searching for EVE University. You would have to search for its alliance, which is named Ivy League.
Right. So I want to interrupt you because we're running out of time, but this is a segment that we should probably extend into a full show. I know that you do university lectures for EVE University twice a week, but it would be nice to do like a podcast and stuff. So we'll talk about that, and maybe we can incorporate Apophany into that as well to kind of do doctrine and mechanics talk for people who are newer to the game and stuff. But thanks for doing the standings, Seamus. Let's finish up the show with talking about what's going on out there in EVE from players. The player news. We have first up the, well, actually, Apophany or anybody, do you guys have any news? Aerith?
You going to talk about the Titan?
Yeah, so MC, that is Mercenary Coalition, lost a Titan. What do we know about that?
PL dropped a bunch of dreads on it, and when you drop a bunch of dreads on something these days, it tends to die.
But there was actually a fight going on, right? It wasn't just that the Titan was cruising, because the first reports were that it was it got killed on a gate, so it was probably traveling. And that turned out probably not to be true, because there was a carrier casualty mail on it, so it looked like it killed some carrier, so maybe it was involved in a fight. When we asked Celine what had happened there, his only response was, it's a bad. It's kind of funny.
It looks travel fit, so the DD may have been that it was just trying to DD something off because it happened to be fit.
Trying to defend itself, yeah, that's true.
That could be the case, or it could have been this is the fit he had and he didn't have time to refit. But given that looks like it's hyperspatial fit, I don't have the kills for so there might be hyperspatials. It could be trying to be the old fastest Titan in the North style, warp in at range, DD something, align, warp back out before you can be caught. That looks like fit. I noticed also the SIBOs, so that seems like a reasonable assumption for what the fit is for. But yeah, I wasn't there. I don't know the story. I think it was PL that killed it. Actually, we dropped the dreads, but I think I was at work at the time or something.
Yeah, according to Rivra, the editor-in-chief at Imperium News, it was a PL dread bomb that's established, and it was during a fight with Black Flag Syndicate. Now, the reason this is news is because MC doesn't usually lose Titans. Either they don't use them that often, or if they do, they're careful. So it was kind of a surprise to see that happen. What's going on with you, Aerith? Have you stirred up enough controversy, or should we stir up some more?
Well, I guess there's been a lot of raging. I guess I've done a little bit of a suffering generation today. I look forward to the eventual Reddit thread. I hope I get one. It's just a bunch of rage and tears.
What are people raging about, especially?
I think that it's one thing to know we're better. It's another thing to have your nose rubbed in it. Would be the best way to describe it.
Oh, so it's just general. Have you ever been called arrogant?
Of course. Like, I can't be, an executive not be a narcissist. I mean, come on, get real.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's a good place to end, unless we have anything else coming from the news. I haven't really looked at. There's a lot of different things that are going on out there. Apparently, the World War Weeb is going off, and there's a lot of battles. I don't know if that's a war, but definitely there's battles associated with it. Right, Apophany?
I mean, there's a lot of big fights happening. We're getting like 2 or 3 really big fights a week and skirmishes throughout. Basically, you've got a whole bunch of entities that like to do PvP in very close proximity, which tends to be good. I managed to lose around 10 bill of ISK in a single minute the other weekend by losing my 6 bill Apostle and T2 Fit Nag in almost the same server take, if I remember correctly, which was pretty fun. But yeah, so it's generally speaking, I think Provi and CO2 Test have kind of figured out that PL haven't got all our supers on standby the whole time. Like, it doesn't take a genius to work out where they are at the moment, given that we didn't bring them with us. So they're realizing that if they have more dreads than we do, they have more dreads than we do. So occasionally they're getting braver and braver and bringing more and more and more to the point where PL are actually getting close to losing fights or like trading a lot worse, and kind of they're adapting to the point where even though PL has a huge bunch of experience and tends to fly more expensive pro-ship doctrines, it is the weight of the numbers and learning to leverage those numbers and being brave against the ticker of PL is slowly starting to work for them. I'd say most of the fighting that we've had, the big fights, obviously on the Citadel timers. So that could be, a Sotio or a Fortizar, fighting on those grids, seeing how the Citadel EM bombs work, having multiple fleets around. It's really good fun. It's like, personally, we mentioned earlier, the thousands of people fights that make all the headlines. I avoid those like the goddamn plague because I don't want to spend 12 hours performing 3 actions. But these fights, local rarely pops 1,000. Well, it stays around there, and so the tie-dye isn't that bad, and it's just really, really good large scale brawling. It's been really, really fun, I think, for all sides involved so far.
What's the deal with PL sitting on top of Brave again? It's like that bully that sits on your neck.
I mean, so like when you're PL, you are basically looking for people to shoot, right? Brave, currently the South has CO2.
Why do you shoot Brave though?
Why wouldn't we shoot Brave? We shoot everyone indiscriminately. It's just Brave happens to be where we are sometimes. We didn't, when they were over in Fountain, we weren't with them, were we?
No, but it's reminiscent, right? Like 2 years ago, you guys, Brave was in Catch. They were in the Hero Coalition, and PL
That's when I just joined PL, actually, when that happened. I'd only just joined. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the case that Brave historically has joined with, the larger coalitions. PL tends to find a target-rich environment and go there. So by Brave aligning with, larger groups like Test or CO2 or whoever, and being in a PvP hotspot, I think it's not necessarily that PL has a vendetta against Brave. It's just that the two groups tend to occupy space, not necessarily for similar reasons, but they're similar. The value of space to where you go, the high value spots for PL to live are also the highest value spots for Brave to live. And by Brave living there, it increases the value for PL to be there, as, CO2 living somewhere increases the value for PL to be there or wherever.
Yeah, the real estate value goes up because there's game to be hunted.
Yeah.
But it does seem like you guys are in the same proximity because you put an Astra House in their staging system. So you basically have them laid out on their back, sitting on their neck. I know it's kind of a fantasy.
I think it's more that, like, if you really want someone to fight you, if they've got a bunch of space and, you want to say, hey, come fight me. If you put an Astra House in front of their undock, that's basically you placing your member on the table and going, come at me, son. Like, I think the easiest way, for example, Aerith, I'm sure you'd agree, if I, as PL, really wanted to fight goons, if I wanted number one to fight goons, it would be drop a Fortizar in your capital system and say, come at me,
why don't you do that?
Because they'll get slaughtered.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's also... Not to be too
Like
anti-PL, but
the meme of "Hey PL, why don't you go out fight goons?" That's like saying, "Hey Brave, why don't you declare war against all the Russians on your own?" Like, it's just dumb.
Yeah, like if people would need to bring like 5 or 6 other alliances, stage, like it would be the most telegraphed move in history. And you've got to understand the fleet that's been built in Delve, like you got the stats. It's not hard to run the math.
Yeah, like ignoring who is better at running caps, ignoring who is better at FCs, who's got more FCs, who's got the energy to do it. If you just look at the mass, then there's like goons just have way too many dudes for any of that. Like the way you've got to think about it is that PL has a certain number of dudes, and the experience and money can increase the power of that certain number of dudes. But you can only increase the power of a certain number of dudes so much. And so there is kind of an upper bound to the power of PL. In the same way that there is an upper bound to the power of goons, because you can think of investing in training and experience as a multiplier to your base core, how many dudes can you put on field value. Goons have a much higher core, how many dudes can you put on field value, and they are currently mining the hell out of Delve every day, so their multipliers, such as having a ton of super capitals, makes them go even stronger in that direction.
Even more importantly now in this meta, we are unmatched economically. We can afford to SRP far more than anyone else. So it's going to be a war of attrition.
And like historically, PL, we make money so that we have enough to do what we want to do. So, you know, when we had the renters with the trillionaires coming back in and back in the days of N3, you know, we try to win alliance tournaments because that's a good way to make money. But PL aren't really kind of empire building for the sake of empire building. It's empire building so we can go screw with someone else. Like we run what we need to run and then do as little PvE as possible to allow us to achieve our goals. Whereas the goon thing is we're going to create an empire and be this huge economic powerhouse and be able to stick our middle finger up to everyone else because we're better organized and haha, you can't touch us, be mad, puppies.
Yeah, there's a downside to that. Like this is going back, you know, a decade. We're traditionally very, very bad at projecting power. But if you come at us on home turf, it's just a Zerg, right? And that's so it has advantages and cons. I mean, they're a nomadic force. We're not. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know if you agree. I think it's fair to say that because of the nature of the Goons organization, and the nature of PL, it means that PL, for example, would tend to have more experience and distributed across more people because we are very focused on PvPing all the time. Whereas Goon, so the way I say it in like an overly simplified term is that PL PvEs in order to PvP, Goons PvP in order to PvE. Would you agree with that as a very broad generalization?
I think you got it backward on the second part, but yeah, like we tend to want to build an empire that we can defend and then we can project power to maybe 1, maybe 2 regions away. In our kind of sphere of influence, we don't try to build an organization that's very nomadic. Like we cannot just move across Eve. It would take us a month. Like it's ridiculous. Whereas PL will be like, hey, I can be fully staged next week.
Yeah. What's interesting is you have these 2 groups, I guess, and then you have this third element of Blood Raiders, or the possibility of the NPCs actually getting involved and becoming spoilers. They can be the honorable third parties of the future. Right, Larkin?
Ah, man, I just want to stir the pot, and I'm just not going to.
You're not getting in here?
Not getting into this Go Rodeo.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. I just wanted to say one last thing that you know, CO2 and Test are in that area too, but maybe those numbers are too big. I don't know. I don't really care. I think it's fine. I think actually Brave really likes fighting PL. That's what I hear. Or at least that's what they say. But a few friends were like, oh, PL's doing it again. And it was just like negative publicity.
One thing I can say, though, is that whenever we fight Brave, or whenever PL fights it, whenever PL deploys to your space, at the end of it, you may have lost a bunch of stuff, but they tend to be stronger PvP organizations after it if they don't fail skate. Because basically, PL being in your space presents a challenge, right? Deal with PL, either leave or find a way to deal with them. And it completely focuses you on what you're doing. So, for example, we've seen in Providence, they've been adapting new doctrines. More of their members are getting more experience in PvP. Newer FCs are coming up with more opportunity. So you can spin it if you want, and it absolutely is spin, is saying that when PL deploys your space, it is an opportunity for you to face a challenge of one of the strongest PvP groups in the game. And given that challenge, it allows you to adapt. So, for example, if you're in an alliance and you're just sat in your space and nothing's really going on, maybe a few skirmishes, you have no motivation and you have no opportunity to really test yourself and push yourself in terms of your PvP capability. Pandemic Legion, if they come by, you have a huge challenge which you now have the opportunity to overcome. It's a huge increase in opportunities for your alliance to take on.
I would agree with that. Like every time we fought PL, we've learned at least something that we went on to use elsewhere.
I understand this example is pretty flawed, but what you're basically saying is like when the Mongol hordes appear outside your city, you can tell your people that, hey, we need to give up to these guys or we're all going to burn, or we can use this as an opportunity to get stronger.
Yeah, so like in real life, obviously everyone dies and it sucks, but this is a game. You can lose all your stuff, but you will have learned and become a better player. As long as the stuff that you really care about not losing, you can evac. So there's no real kind of like, oh my God, this is a horrible thing. As long as your membership doesn't go, we're losing. I thought we would always win. Oh, this sucks. We're going to fail skate and go to other places. Like it's about your approach to the game, whether you enjoy being challenged and you enjoy pursuing personal improvement, or if you just want a quiet place to wrap. Both of which are entirely valid and fair play styles. But if you just want a quiet place to wrap, just be a renter. Like that is the easiest solution to that problem.
But so I'm not getting involved.
No, do it. I want to hear your opinion. You're an expert. You're an amazing player when you were playing, and just for a second, you can talk about the politics that drives people to this game.
Honestly, I don't have a horse in this race, but I just think that it's kind of funny, right? Like I understand Apophany's argument, and on some level, he's like that argument has some value. I mean, if you're the guy that's getting evicted, then you might not agree with that. But then looking at it from the reverse point of view, I mean, if you're Pandemic Legion and you've got a whole heap of strength and you want to go and find content and you have the choice between Brave and someone else that might be a little bit tougher, why wouldn't you go for the tougher one? Don't you want to improve your fighting ability?
I mean, to what I'd say to that is we deployed to a bunch of people who are really angry at us, like CO2 and Test, who even just fought in the Tribute War, and we didn't bring all our supers. So we're fighting one arm behind our back, which is actually, like, internally, it's really strengthened what we can do, because we can't just always rely on, I'm sure you remember, oh no, everything's gone wrong, log in supers, blow up the field with supers, and just tank until downtime, right? But now we left all that behind, and it's really forcing PL, like CO2 Test Provi, many fights, they're pushing us to the limits of what we have available. So it's forcing everyone to eke everything out. Like, I have not seen PL be so combat ready and PvP capable in like quite a while. There are so many more people getting involved because we are fighting against, while it might not look like it to the outside, odds that are not just massively easily in our favor.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, you can kind of calculate the ratios of Apophanies. So internally, we use 3-to-1. Like PL, that's about the limits of what they can do, is 3-to-1.
Oh, so you've already figured out, like, we're not going to win unless we're at least twice their number?
No, I'm talking like an average alliance. Us, it's probably about 2-to-1, yeah, but I would say that. Just because our average player skills will be lower, we have a lot of newbies, that kind of thing. But we tend to make up with it. We try to, our multiplier tends to be tactics that we save, that we never use, and we wait for the right moment. Is that force multiplier, like on a BTEC-R situation or something like that, where you do multi-station camp, bubbles everywhere, you know, surprise drop, blah, blah, blah. We tried to do that in head. That didn't work out well for us. So you always have to have a multiplier. You just have to figure out how your multipliers stack up against the hostile alliances.
Yeah, I'd also, in fairness, and again, entirely more spin coming from me. It is not like in these fights, PL are bringing all these pirate battleships with Foxes and Dreads against a bunch of T1 cruisers. So there was a fight when we were just fighting Provi recently. We had Max, they had Nightmares. So two pirate battleship doctrines. They had more pirate battleships than we did on field. So, I mean, it's not like, you know, we're bringing all this fancy, blingy pirate faction battleships against a bunch of guys in Feroxes or what have you. They have equal means in terms of the height of the ships, so they can bring dreads, they can bring faxes. They absolutely cannot compete in us in terms of super capitals if we had them, so we don't. But if they, got on it, it is not a insurmountable problem for your test, for your C2, for your Provi to get into PvP mode. With the people they have and the resources they have, they can start churning out, faxes and dreads. I guess what I'm trying to say, it is if motivated and if there are alliances behind them, fighting PL without Supercapped is a entirely non-insurmountable challenge. It is hard. It will require a lot of learning, a lot of losses, but it is a reasonable challenge, I think.
All right.
Well, I would agree with him. And now that Test has joined Brave, I think now they're right at the very limit of what PL is going to be able to handle if they don't bring the hammer.
What would be the hammer? The super capitals or NC?
Yeah, like if they just want to put it to bed, they'll bring the supers down. But then the fights are going to die. So I don't think that's their intention.
Yeah. Well, what would happen if NC were to join them, because they kind of cooperate a lot? PL and NC cooperate.
Then the fights are probably going to die. I mean, I think there'll be a couple bloody ones, and then the first time Test or Brave lose a couple 100 billion, they have to SRP or just say no SRP, then it's over. Because as soon as the SRP runs dry, your fighting streak's gone.
Yeah, I mean, so like NC dot are the opposite side of the map at the moment, and when a couple of times what's happened is that PL has fought Provi, and there's been a fairly reasonable fight. Both sides we've had engagement, and then we've split apart, and then the next timer, as we shoot the thing for 20 minutes, half an hour, Provi will bat phone Test and CO2 and all their nerds, and then PL will be like, oh shit, we're getting bat phone blobbed. We'll try and get NC through a wormhole to kind of to try and match bat phones, as it were.
Yeah, I think if you're just doing that, then the fights can continue. But if NC were to stage with you, you'd get 2 or 3 good fights, and I think it dries up because you're gonna beat them in the face, and they're gonna have to retire.
Overfishing the pond.
Oh yeah.
It's the same argument as why no supers and titans, because if we did, who the hell other than goons, and if all the Russians together, would want to willingly take a fight within PL super drop range? It's just dumb.
Well, what will be interesting is what would be really interesting if you brought the supers and you had some situation where we could drop somehow, like it was a big enough fight, then that would get really interesting. But
I mean, you got to believe that the top groups in the game are with a magnifying glass on all of your supers and dread movements.
Oh, of course, because, and this isn't a leak or anything, or this isn't bloviation or ego stroking. Everybody knows we have the largest super cap in the game now. Doesn't mean they're the best, don't get me wrong, but by far and away, if you combine Darkness and CPL, they can't match our numbers.
Does that mean that you would take the field if everything were to happen again, like BTEC-R, where all the big
There's no question we would. There's no question. Given our reserves, we would absolutely take the fight. We don't have an ISK limitation at this point.
And also with groups like PL, if we field everything, you've got guys multi-boxing pretty damn hard. Even in the fights against Provi, I'm multi-boxing a triage and a dread, right? I'm doing that. Where in goons, I'm assuming that if you don't have the multi-boxers, you can afford to have singular people paying singular attention to the thing they're doing. And in the days of fighters, that's far more important.
Yeah, it's generally very few multi-boxers. The FCs will, like a super and then their FC ship or something. But yeah, most people are just 1-to-1.
Yeah, to get PL maximum numbers that you see, that's a lot of people dual boxing DPS or dual boxing Logi, or I'm doing a triage and a dread. Obviously you try and limit that as much as possible so you can pay attention to what you're doing. But if you need the numbers to be able to take the fight in the first place, then you push into multi-boxing, and that leaves room for a lot of mistakes. If in the fight where I lost my Apostle and my Dread, my Apostle was getting primaried by a Dread bomb. I was against 12 Dreads, so I just didn't even look at my Dread anymore, and I was just focused on the Apostle, and it so nearly survived, and it would have survived if one of the reps hadn't burnt out, because I slightly mismanaged the heat, which was really annoying. But it was a really good learning process, because I've never had to really manage heat on my Apostle before. I've always tanked kind of well, or usually pretty easy. So this was a really cool stress test personally.
It was a 6 billion in 6 billion with ship and modules, so you'd expect that you would hold up pretty long for that amount of money.
I tanked 12 dreads on my face. That's pretty cool for a fax.
Is that a crime in some countries? Take on that many dreads. Well, that was interesting. Our numbers were ticking up, so I thought, oh, I'll let this go on a little longer than usual, because it was interesting to see that and to have Goon Swarm and PL.
And don't forget CCP, Larrikin's most interesting person on the show.
I was about to say, and CCP in the same room, but CCP is wisely mostly staying out of it. Even though I know,
trap, man.
I know he's got opinions.
Come on, I thought of all the CCPers when I heard it was Larrikin. I thought for sure we'd get some fireworks out of you.
Not today. Maybe drunk on a boat in a week's time.
To Arth's credit, he did say like Larkin was one of the good ones, I think, as far as CCP. So I guess
I think Larrikin generally wants what's best for Eve, not necessarily what's best for Larrikin's dev ego, and I'm not suggesting others are right directly. But he tries to do the right thing in every situation that I've seen.
Yeah. Hey, one last thing, Larkin. What's going to bring, and it's not the Holy Grail, but what's going to bring players to Eve? Because that's a question that came up earlier in the show, and I really think it's important. What really attracts people to play this game?
I think this is a really common misconception by players, and I talked about it on the High Drag podcast. I don't think there's one thing that brings people to Eve, and I don't think there's one playstyle for Eve. So the reason Aerith plays is basically completely uninteresting to me. It's not my gameplay. It's not an interesting way for me to play Eve. But then there's a whole bunch of others that are. So I don't think there's a magic bullet, and I think trying to design for a magic bullet is a trap. Is a good way to make a big mistake. So
agreed.
Is that what
you guys have done a great job the last 2 years or so. You've spread the dev love around many different play styles, right? And that's one of the things I think has really brought back Eve is everyone's getting a little love. Now, you might not get as much as you want, but every gameplay is getting a little bit of attention, some new cool feature.
Yeah. So you don't want to crush the masses and hear their wailing of suffering and all that kind of stuff, Larkin. That's not your deal.
When I play that's perhaps not economically, but in honorable PvP perhaps. But I just think there's a lot of ways to play Eve. I mean, I'm perhaps more well known for sort of fleet and capital combat, but I also used to do a bunch of manufacturing for a while, and I lived in wormholes for a while, and I just think that depending on the player, there's different ways to play the game, and there's no right way. There's absolutely no right way. I question even if there's any wrong ways to play Eve.
Yeah. I mean, Aerith is practically an arsonist. I hear him like getting excited when people are getting angry.
I did tell everyone with the show that I love suffering. Like, don't get shot.
Yeah. But no, it wasn't that, what is the one thing that brings people to Eve, but what are some of the...
I think I will say, and even this is wrong. So I'm going to caveat with what I'm saying is wrong. I think the social aspects of Eve are very strong, and I think that brings a lot of people to Eve. That said, there's totally room for people who solo, and a lot of people do.
Yeah, sometimes I prefer to play alone, actually. But what a great show, a mixture of things. I'd like to go another hour, but I got to take off. Got to let people have their day too. Thanks to the audience for showing up. Well over 300 people. We're back up to 300, which is shocking this late in the show. And I want to thank Seamus and Apothny for hanging in there and doing the spots. Tiberius wasn't able to join us. Neither was Dirk. Both said they would find a way to be here, but alarm clocks didn't go off, it looks like. Sorry, Dirk. And I think I did see Tiberius in the audience. I would especially like to thank Aerith and CCP Larrikin. What's next for you guys, by the way? You're going to be... what's the next thing out of CCP on this Blood Raider thing? Are you going to be making some kind of a feedback or what do you call it? A dev blog about how it went or anything like that? Any plans?
It's something we've talked about doing. We actually hope to have a bit of a dev blog about it before we ship the feature, and that obviously hasn't happened. We're certainly going to be iterating over the tactics that the AI use. We have plans for more challenges as well, not just Dreadnoughts, but we'd love to see Force Auxiliaries and Titans controlled by the NPCs fighting to defend their shipyards. So yeah, I think we're going to spend Team Phenomenon, the team I'm on, is going to probably spend a bit of time sort of working on that.
Oh, cool. Aerith, what's next for you?
Laying on a beach in a private house with staff with my wife.
I mean, an Eve, not your luxurious lifestyle.
I think right now we're in that quiet period where we're preparing for the next patch. I think largely we're trying to guide the average line member into their investments for the next iteration of Citadels. So that's going to occupy the next 3 months. We're pretty much done fortifying. So right now we're in a pretty quiet period as far as planning and what we need to do with us. We're still building our market economically, as you can see in the MER. And I can't wait for people to keep seeing it go up each month now that it's accurate. So that'll be fun to see the threads.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before, but 7,000 people since January is a lot of people joining up. I've seen.
If you go back and you look at TMC from, I don't know, 2 years ago, whatever it is, I posted an article with our plan. I laid it out in TMC to hit 25K years ago. We just got interrupted with a little war.
A little war thing that happened.
Is there a finite amount of resources you can get from Delve, or is it does it respawn as fast as you can mine? Like, is there a theoretical upper limit to what you can eke out of Delve with all your members?
Yep, there is. Yeah, we've calculated that. We know it's based on it's based on a lot of different variables. Yeah, there's a limit.
How close are you to? You're like 80%, 50%? Are you
more than 50, less than 80?
Oh, pretty cool.
Well, all right. What a great show. Thanks, guys. I want to let you know that you can support the podcast at Patreon/Matterall, and you can also support other content creators, people that bring you the shows and the videos and stuff like that. Find ways to support them with subscriptions and all that sort of thing. I did get a little list that I should read here, and that was thank you to our devs for subscribing. That's 8 months now. Andy McKinnon has subscribed as well. I do subscribe for 6 months now. And thanks for the follow to Vinny Cordone. Thank you guys very much. All that stuff counts, just registers and lets us know what the reach is, if the show is worth doing and stuff like that. So do that for everybody that you watch and keep them generating really cool content for people that still don't play EVE. I will say, I did get a message from somebody that said they watched Talking in Stations for 6 months before they decided to play EVE. Maybe not 6 months, but months. And so that was interesting to see somebody picked up on the broadcast before they actually said, I'll play the game. Unusual, but really neat to see. So all this stuff works and counts. All right. Thanks very much. The last thing I'll say is that if you wanted to join Imperium News, we are a very well-organized group that has different divisions, writer divisions, artist divisions, programmers, and even administrators and stuff like that. Join Imperium News using the Imperium News website. There's a Discord there that you can join, and you can find me there. You can talk to me directly if you want. Thanks very much for watching the show. We will see you next week. That's it for Talking in Stations this week.
Semdol ka ke mo fa seda.